Thank you for joining us. Este va a ser como medio Spanglish porque I think los dos hablamos así entre
Perfect.
medio mixado, pero I know you've been working con muchos influencers, un poco de artistas, comenzando de Wisin y Yandel y ahora recientemente con Marc Anthony, y también sé que tienes a Franduleo 411. De comenzar con Forensic Science, que I know you went to school for, a la música, like what was that change? So, ¿cómo empezó todo?
First of all, thank you so much. I know we've known each other for a while, and we did interviews for Faranduleo, so it's exciting to be here on the other side of the camera. Pero thank you so much por la invitación. De verdad que estoy encantada de poder estar aquí contigo y que pudimos encontrar un poquito de tiempo, because I know our agendas were a little chaotic for a while. Pero primero que nada, gracias. Segundo, sí, o sea, yo estudié Criminal Justice. And I got a forensic science certificate because originally I wanted to do forensic science. I was obsessed with CSI. All of the CSIs, I used to watch all of them. And I really kind of just wanted to go into that and explore that. I loved criminal justice. And so I got my degree in that. And I was working as a fraud investigator for about a total of about 11 years. Pero siempre me llamó el mundo de la música. Creo que en el momento que me tocó estudiar no había pensado en la posibilidad de trabajar en eso. Simplemente era la música que me encantaba. Yo me acuerdo hace años, cuando yo era más jovencita, I think during my high school years or a little bit before that, había un programa aquí en Estados Unidos. A lot of you might not remember, you might be too young for that. Pero había un programa de radio que daban todos los domingos. Bueno, dependía de donde tú vivías, eran los sábados o los domingos, y era con Javier Romero, el que salía en Sábado Gigante. Y él tenía un show que era sobre las top 40 de la semana. And I was obsessed with that show. I used to listen to it every Sunday. Because te daba el countdown y te tocaba cada canción. Si te tocaba las 40 canciones, eran como 2 o 3 horas el show de radio. Y tenía entrevista con artistas también. I was fascinated by it. I think that's kind of where my love for it really grew. And también miraba los canales de Univision y Telemundo que tenían, más que nada Univision, que tenía programas de música. Que we don't have that now, pero era como los countdown también, los top 10 de la semana, y hacían
Yo
entrevistas
me
con los
acuerdo.
like for example, Onda Max,
Oh
Control,
my
Algo,
God.
they were my favorite, and I think they were also my favorite because eran de Miami. So I think that's where kind of my love for music and Miami came from. But it was just merely, I was obsessed with music, Latin music. And this surprises a lot of people when I tell them I never really listened to English music. A pesar de que I was born and raised here in the United States. I was born and raised in LA. I live now between LA and Miami, more so Miami than LA, but I'm still bi-coastal. And I grew up listening to Spanish music. And
Claro.
y siempre, obviamente, siendo mitad puertorriqueña, mitad mexicana, y me inclino un poquito más por lo mexicano, por lo puertorriqueño. So yo escuchaba mucha salsa creciendo, mucha música tropical. And then obviously cuando entró el reggaetón, empecé a escuchar mucho el reggaetón, and that's kind of where my transition started. I was in college, I had graduated, I was working, I remember, at a bank because I wanted to work in their fraud department. And eventually I worked there for about a year and a half, and that's when Wisin y Yandel made their entrance into the US from Puerto Rico, con la música, que empezó el reggaetón. And a lot of people don't know, pero LA was a big cradle home for reggaeton when it started en sus comienzos. Todos los artistas iban a Los Ángeles. Todos los artistas hacían conciertos en Los Ángeles. A lot of the big concerts were done in LA because LA was really the home for reggaeton.
Era como el Miami de ahora, back then.
Exacto. Y en ese entonces yo vivía en Los Ángeles. Todo el mundo iba, todos los artistas iban porque eran para darse a conocer. And we were really huge on reggaeton. We were one of the first ones that opened the doors to reggaeton. Obviously, besides New York, I think Miami came a little bit after. Pero obviamente we were really big. Y mientras yo trabajaba, my corporate job, me encantaba la música de Wisin y Yandel, me encantaba la música de Daddy Yankee, que en ese momento también estaba en su apogeo. Y nada, me acuerdo que fui a un in-store. A lot of you young kids probably don't know what it is.
Cuéntanos
It's
un
a
poquito más.
signing que se tenía en ese entonces con los artistas. Remember, you'd stand in line for hours to see them, to get an autograph and a picture with them. And en uno de esos, fui a uno de Wisin y Yandel, que fue en Los Ángeles. I think it was the year was probably around 2005, cuando tenían el disco de Los Vaqueros. Acababa de salir, creo que para el mundo, luego salió Los Vaqueros. And that was kind of when they made their official entrance into the US. And I remember I went with my sister. I took time off from work and I went with my sister and we stood in line for hours and we went with a couple of friends and I was obsessed. I was enchanted by el mundo de la música y la gente que lo trabajaba. And I was like, I'd love to do this. Pero fue un pensar, o sea, un pensamiento pasajero en ese
Claro, como
momento.
que se ve chévere, se ve cool.
Exacto. Entonces fui al DC y me acuerdo que yo decía, wow, hay mucha gente aquí, hay mucha gente que conoce de la música que está empezando a entrar. I wonder if they have a fan club. Entonces me acuerdo que yo me acerqué al manager de Wisin y Yandel en ese entonces, Adrian, and I said, hey, nice to meet you. My name is Fulanita. First of all, I don't even know how I got to the manager.
No, te iba a preguntar, pero en ese momento tú no habías hecho nada, like, with music.
Nada.
Te lanzaste nomás, like, okay, let's do it.
Entonces, yo todavía, bueno, for those of you that don't know, my name is Claudia Rebecca, and Becky comes from Rebecca. And yo empecé Becky Boricua because I also opened a blog and a website and all that kind of stuff. And when I opened my socials, when I was thinking of a name to come up with, that's another story that people don't know. Pero en ese entonces, going back to the original question, I was still going by my name Claudia because there were no social media.
Claro, okay.
There was no social media. Facebook was just starting. Pero Facebook, para los que are a little bit older, if you guys remember, Facebook used to be only for kids that were in college. You had to be in college. Pero en ese mismo momento, en esos mismos años o en ese mismo año, quitaron eso and it was open for everyone. So that's okay, now I'm going to open my own profile. So I opened my own profile and then I spoke to the manager and I was like, hey, my name is Claudia. I'm Puerto Rican. I love reggaeton. I love the music. I love Wisin y Yandel. By any chance, do you guys have a fan club? I know you guys are entering the US from Puerto Rico. And he's like, no, he's like, we don't have a fan club. He's like, we don't have that yet. You know, and if you guys remember, if you're a little bit older, which ahora existen, pero no al extremo en que existían en ese momento los fan clubs. Fan clubs were huge back then. And it's really what made an artist, you know, big or what really, you know, what really moved the masses much more than social. Eran los fan clubs. So, en ese entonces todos los artistas tenían fan clubs y todo eso. Entonces se me hizo muy raro que no tuvieran fan club, pero dije yo, bueno, acaban de hacer su entrada a Estados Unidos, give it a little bit of time. So se me ocurrió y dije yo, bueno, maybe I'll do the fan club. Entonces dije yo, bueno,
that's my job now.
Yeah, I was like, bueno.
So básicamente you like almost like made up your own job.
Sí. Yo le dije, okay, well, you know, I really love them. My sister really loves them. We have these friends that really love them. Are you open? And I think what happened also was that I was an actual adult. I wasn't a 15-year-old. You know what I mean? In 2005, I had just graduated college. I was 21 and don't do the math. And I was an adult. So I think that also helped me a lot in the fact that I wasn't like this groupie and I wasn't this 15 crazed teenager. You know what I mean? Claro. So creo que eso me ayudó mucho. Yo creo que Edgar vio que I was serious about it and I wasn't, you know, playing around. And I said, look, I'd really like to start the fan club. Can we talk about the possibility about opening the fan club, but at the same time, making it completely official? Like I want to be the official fan club. And he said, I love the idea. He's like, let's run with it. Let me know what you need. So I started kind of getting from that and subsequent in stores, I would get the people's info. Like, because again, remember there was no social. So I would have to get their name and their email and to a lot of them, their phone numbers too. So I started creating my email list.
Nice.
Crazy. I started creating my email list and I started building like a database of like fans. And then como I was already on Facebook, I'm like, you know what? Let me do a fan page. And first I did a profile for the fan club. And then I did a fan page. And then that's where I started directing everyone to go to for like updates and stuff like that. Y ahí fue que empezó mi relación con Wisin y Yandel y con el manejo, because they saw that I was serious. They saw that I really wanted to kind of help out. And I think I penned myself as the first social media because I was the liaison between the artists and the fans cuando social media no existía.
Yeah.
Entonces, cuando ellos wanted to reach a certain fan base in a certain city, they would reach out to me and they'd be like, hey, Becky, we're going to have an in-store in New York. We need fans to come. Hey, Becky, we're going to have one in Miami. We need fans to come, or we need fans to know about the in-store. So ahí fue que yo empecé a esta relación con Wisin y Yandel, con el manejo, y a la misma vez con las disqueras, que en ese momento era Universal Music Latin. Empecé el acercamiento con la disquera, la relación, porque ellos también me necesitaban. In order to do the in-stores and album drops and all that kind of stuff, they needed me. Then empezaban las giras. Ahí empezó mi relación con AEG Live and Live Nation, because they also needed promo in order to sell, because they had their traditional marketing. Social media marketing didn't exist. They had their traditional marketing, which was radio and entrevistas y los artistas también iban a la radio a hacer muchas entrevistas, mucha promoción. Pero what's another way that you can reach the masses? Through fan clubs. And I'm the one that had the access to all of them. I remember one time cuando en ese entonces se hacían todavía los premios MTV Latinos, pero eran de Estados Unidos, no de Latinoamérica, que ya, by the way, no se hacen. Se hicieron en Los Ángeles un año y me acuerdo que se comunicaron conmigo y me dijeron, Becky, we need to have at least 250 fans. No, they said we need to have some fans because we need Wisin y Yandel performing. It's going to be, en ese entonces, el Gibson Amphitheater in LA. We need you to bring fans. And I was like, okay, got it. And I like got all the info and blah, blah, blah. And I remember that I took a total of 250 fans. Like, I would reach out to them. I'm like, hey, there's going to be these award shows. Like, it's going to be at the Gibson.
Pero me preguntas, ¿qué le escribías? Or like, how was that connection like between you and the fans?
I would email them, or I'd call them, or I'd text them, and I'd be like, hey.
You call them?
Yeah. So I would, because remember, there's no social media. So I can't just kind of shoot out a message and be like, hey. So en ese entonces empezó a moverse Twitter. Y ya como que Instagram was later, pero Twitter empezó a moverse un poco, so abrí la página de Twitter también, y ahí fue que poco a poco empecé mandando mensajes y cosas así, pero obviamente la conexión yo tenía que hacerla en persona cuando habían eventos. Claro. Entonces ya decía, make sure to follow us and stuff like that, y ahí ya se me empezaba a hacer más fácil porque mandaba mensajes y ya la gente respondía, no era tan difícil como que reach out to them. Pero sí, yo les dije, por ejemplo, there's going to be the MTV Latin Awards. They're going to be in LA. It's going to be at the Gibson Amphitheater. Wisin y Yandel are going to be performing. Que en ese entonces, I remember clearly they performed in the club with 50 Cent.
Banger.
So they were like, yes, I want to go. And I'm like, okay. Y ya yo me encargaba, like, give me your information. We're going to put you on a list. Like, put you on a list. Entonces ya yo esa lista se la pasé a la gente encargada y ya nada, la gente fue, o sea, era super cool y fueron como 250 personas, me acuerdo. And they were like, Becky, you sent, well, Claudia, they were like, you sent more people than we expected. We love it, because cuando ellos salieron, o sea, eso fue un alboroto because that's what they were there for. So, and that's kind of like, it literally just...
How were you figuring out like what to do? Porque en ese tiempo todo estaba como que, in a way, era como que innovative, like, oh, we're going to social media, like, how did you make them believe you? O sea, like,
I think what happened is I had the power of communication. And I think that when they saw the power of communication that I had, and that I was good at what I was doing, and that I was good at getting the word out, and that I had actual results because I had taken fans to the in-stores, I had taken fans to the award show. I think that's when they realized, like, hey, Becky has the power of communication when there's no other way to do it. So I think that that's because I had, an actual track record where I had proven myself. They were like, okay, let's go ahead and use her. So I think that that's kind of what drew Yandel to use me as well. And it was an amazing, successful first launch for the song and the album. I'm sorry, for the song and the single. Y nos fue súper bien. Y justo después de eso, después de que lo lanzó, él firmó con Sony Music. So ya entró una disquera, ya entró un budget, ya entró, o sea, the big guns. Then eventualmente llegaron las entrevistas, que yo siempre lo he dicho, era algo que yo nunca en mi vida quería hacer, nunca, because I'm super shy.
What? You shy? No way.
En el sentido de que me daba como que pena hacer una entrevista, because I always felt like, pues, esto no es lo mío. I didn't study journalism. Like, I don't want to take away from like an actual journalist. Pero nunca lo había pensado hasta que una publicista me dice, mira, tengo a fulanita, honestly, ni me acuerdo la publicista ni me acuerdo del artista. Me dice, tengo a fulanita, quiero que le hagas una entrevista. Y yo le dije, yo no hago entrevistas. Yo solo, I just go to events and cover them. And she's like, no. She's like, but I know you'd be good. She's like, can you do an interview? And I was like, and she's like, look, I know you can do it. And I was like, that's when it came to me. And this is why I always say, from that moment on, I always say, take every opportunity that comes your way, because you never know where that's going to lead you, whether that's a new adventure, or at the same time, it could be you try it and you're like, I never want to do interviews again. I don't like them. I tried and tested, done with. You know what I mean? Right. So I always say, like, my number one tip is, my number one and my number two go hand in hand. I think one of them is take every opportunity that comes your way. And the other one is network the shit out of it.
You're right.
Okay. You know, this is an industry where, as much as it has to do with talent, it also has to do with connections. And si tú no conoces a nadie, por más talento que tú tengas, no vas a llegar a ningún lado.
No, literal. Yeah, es más importante, like, the networking, who knows you, you know what I'm saying?
100%. Entonces, nada, por ahí seguí haciendo contactos. Eventualmente dije yo, bueno, voy a tomar esa oportunidad. Se me vino, let's see how it goes. And I did interviews. And for maybe about a year and a half, I did interviews, but I would do them behind the camera. I would have the artist.
Okay, you were como que shy, like, you're like, let me not be on camera yet.
Exacto, I was like, yo no quiero salir en cámara. Me acuerdo de 2 personas que hasta el día de hoy les agradezco el haberme lanzado. Fue Pedro Capó y Kika Rocha, que Kika Rocha tiene que ver con moda y cosas así. Me acuerdo que fue una entrevista con Pedro Capó. Se comunicaron conmigo y llegué a hacer la entrevista, hice el setup y todo. Yo me paro detrás y él me dice, pero tú no te vas a sentar aquí conmigo. Y yo, no, es que yo no hago entrevistas en cámara. Le dije, pero yo estoy bien. And he was like, no, pero he's like, yo no te voy a dar la entrevista si tú no te sientas conmigo. Y yo,
oh, man.
You're gonna do the interview. And he's like, I know you do. He's like, pero yo no te la voy a dar si no te sientas conmigo. Y yo, okay. I the interview. So I was like, okay. So I remember I sat down next to him and I was like this the whole time.
Super
like, I didn't know what to do. I didn't know where to put my face. I didn't know if to look at him or look at the camera. No sabía, pero quedó súper la entrevista. Y cuando terminamos, he's like, you seem like you did a great job. And I was like, I was so nervous. It was my first time. And I was like, I've always done it behind the cameras. He's like, you did great. So that was the first time. And then with Kika Rocha, hubo un evento de People en español. Y ella fue para la parte de la moda. Y me acuerdo que yo estaba haciendo las entrevistas así con mi teléfono, because I've never had a camera. I've always done it with my cell phone. And I remember I was like this.
Super resourceful, you. Love it.
Yeah, ella me dice, pero tú no vas a salir en la entrevista. Y yo, no salgo en las entrevistas, yo las hago desde acá, pero no te preocupes, sale bien. Me dice, no. Me dice, yo no voy a hacer la entrevista si tú no sales. Y yo, pero es que yo no hago entrevistas en cámara. Me dice, no. You're going to do fine. Come over here. Y yo, okay. And I remember that at the end, she said, you did a great job. And I was like, thank you.
Bonito.
And I remember she shared the interview and everything, which is, for the most part, it's rare when an artist, shares an interview. But it was super cool. Y ahí fue que me fui adentrando y dije yo, bueno, I kind of like this. Y empecé a hacer entrevistas. Y porque empecé a hacer entrevistas, empezó a crecer más mi network, because I was more in communication with publicists.
And you were more in front of the camera too.
Exacto. And also I started making friends with artists, because I was starting to interview them, or I'd interview them one time and they'd come back again. And that's where my network really started growing, and I started getting much more comfortable, as you can see in front of the camera.
Primero que nada, like you just dropped so many gems, like como que indirectamente. But one of the main things it caught my attention, at least. You are an entrepreneur, ¿verdad? Porque desde el principio, like, even though you went to school y todo, you were like, no sé si sabías como que directamente, like, oh, I'm doing this on purpose, but you were like, how can I create an opportunity for me? Like, inconscientemente, you were like making your own path with following the things you love. Entonces, como que, ¿de dónde nació eso? Was it like your family? Like, did you see it somewhere?
Actually, you know what? Ahora que lo mencionas, and that I look back on it, because yo creo que, como dijiste, en el momento no lo hice como que, ok, eso es lo que quiero hacer. I feel like, and this has to do a lot, and this is why I tell people que no se desanimen. I feel like the no's along the way is what motivated me to create my own path. Because I remember I would reach out to people and like, they wouldn't get back to me. And I was looking for an opportunity to enter the world of music and I couldn't find it. And I remember that I was like, I would get frustrated and I'm like, well, if nobody gives me the opportunity, like, how am I going to do something in the music world? And I remember que yo siempre pensaba, entonces I would toggle between that, but then at the same time, I'm like, coño, like, why don't I just make my own thing? You know what I mean? Like, do my own thing. I don't need to depend on anybody else. And
Porque ya estás cansada de los no's, me imagino.
Ese pensamiento siempre me venía cuando alguien me decía que no, o no me contestaba el email, o no me contestaba el texto, o no me contestaba la llamada, o yo le pedía ayuda, o eso y lo otro, y como que no hacían nada. Y yo decía, pero coño, like, ¿por qué tengo yo que depender de otra persona? O sea, si la persona me quiere dar la oportunidad, pues se lo pierde. O sea, I'll figure out a way to do it on my own. And it was hard because, again, I started from scratch. My network is from scratch. Like, a mí nadie me puso en un evento. Nada. O sea, a mí no me pusieron en un evento y me pasaron por el cuarto entero y me presentaron a todo el mundo. No, this is a network that I've constructed over the past 18 years, little by little with work that I've done myself. And I think that that's what motivated me the most. And I think it's also, you know, my parents. I think for the most part, they've taught me that I don't need to depend on anybody else and that I have it in me to do it. Like, I don't need anybody's permission. You know what I mean? Yeah. And I think that when I started noticing that, I was like, te digo, like, I'd get frustrated. And then I was like, you know what? Like, I don't need anybody to give me permission. I don't need anybody to give me an opportunity. Let's create an opportunity for myself. And I think that slowly, that's why I started making my way into the music industry. Me acuerdo que cuando me decían, antes de que yo tuviera faranduleo, people were like, oh, like, they would know me, but they didn't really know what I did. Mm-hmm. And I was like, I just kind of do everything, which is true. And up until today, I do everything. And I'm like, now I think I have an official title. Claro, okay, en ese entonces le digo, I don't really have an official title. Like, I do a lot of stuff, you know, and then when I started doing influencers, my world opened up a little more and I started doing more things. But I think it was that. I think there was the motivation subconsciously de la gente que no me contestaba, no me ayudaba, me decía que no. Pero no fue tan black and white. O sea, no era como que alguien venía y no me hablaba y yo decía, bueno, pues yo lo voy a hacer yo sola y yo no necesito a nadie. Claro.
Como el primer no.
Primero lloraba, me frustraba. Yo decía, maybe this isn't for me. Maybe I should be, maybe what I lived in Miami for 3 years was just an adventure and that was meant to be an adventure and that's it. Ahí se queda. Mi vida sigue. I come back to criminal justice y se acabó. Pero algo dentro de mí decía, no, you have to keep doing it. You have to keep doing it. Entonces, I think that for the time that I was in LA, I think that that's also why I opened Faranduleo, because I felt like that was that little string that was keeping me connected to the world of music. So because otra cosa que yo pensaba era, Miami is very, very visual in the sense that if they don't see you at an event, they forget about you.
Yep.
So, para mí era muy importante que la gente del mundo de la música latina en Miami no se olvidara de mí.
Te veía ahí trabajando, like everywhere, like cada poster, that's you.
Entonces dije yo, si yo ya no estoy, ¿cómo es la manera en que yo voy a continuar la relación con ellos? Y era por medio de continuar haciendo las entrevistas, por medio de seguir compartiendo las noticias de los artistas and stuff like that. And I think that was kind of like my way of kind of holding on to Miami en lo que yo decidía que era lo que yo iba a hacer.
Yeah, but I love that porque nunca diste como que, oh, like, and me, like maybe I'm assuming on your 10th no, you're like, oh, you know what, this is not for me. I do got this degree, me voy para atrás, like voy a estudiar esto, me quedo aquí ya. Like nunca te querías como que quedar ahí, no, I don't want to say estancada, pero settled. You like, I'm assuming porque es algo que, o sea, I feel that like yo, like, oh, like siempre quiero tratar de mejorar, like superar, like, you know, learn something new, or like, oh, what else can I do? Almost like one-upping yourself, pero not in an unhealthy way. But I'm assuming you were like also like, no, like I can do more. Like, okay, ya me aburrí. Like, maybe let me go on this path, pero like para seguir creciendo, like in your field, essentially.
And I think what happens also is because of the multiple jobs that I did within the music industry, I went acquiring new skills. You know what I mean? Like now I could interview people and I could cover concerts and all kinds of stuff. And I think that I would pick up different things. Y es eso mismo. Yo decía, bueno, ya hice esto. ¿Qué otra cosa puedo hacer dentro del mundo de la música? Y creo que también lo que tenía que ver mucho era que yo no sabía qué yo quería hacer en el mundo de la música.
¿Te tiraste nomás o qué fue? No
Me tiré y yo no sabía, I think what people have to understand, and of course this happens to people, and there are people that are like, no, yo quiero ser X y voy a hacer X. Conmigo nunca fue así, o sea, yo nunca dije, bueno, quiero ser publicista and I'm going to do that. No, I never knew what I wanted to do in the music. I just knew that I wanted to work in the music. And eventually, as I started learning more stuff and learning more about the industry and the ins and the outs, I was like, okay, I'm narrowing it down a little to wanting to work closely to an artist. But how does that look like? Is it being their publicist? Is it being their manager? Is it being doing their social media? What is it? And I couldn't still pin it. So I think that because I was like, okay, I've done interviews. What do I do now? And I had the opportunity that I didn't look for. I had the opportunity to be a publicist at the Latin Grammys for 2 years. Yo nunca había sido publicista. Me acuerdo cuando la muchacha se comunicó conmigo, yo dije, pero yo no soy publicista, yo nunca lo he hecho, me dice. And I have to credit those people that always believed in me, that saw it before I did, como la de las entrevistas y también esto con lo de publicist, porque yo le dije, pero es que, o sea, yo nunca he sido publicista. O sea, sí, yo sé lo que una publicista hace, porque yo llevo una relación muy estrecha con muchas, pero yo no, o sea, I've always been on the other side. I've always been on the side of the artist interviewing them. So I don't, you know, I can do it, but I don't really know. Entonces me dice, no te preocupes. I know you can do it. I've seen you in action. She's like, and I'll teach you anything you don't know. But I need you to go to the Latin Grammys with me. Yo, okay. Me acuerdo que me tiré, estaba súper nerviosa. But I survived. I survived. I did a great job. And I remember that I think a lot of the times we don't give ourselves credit. And I remember that I was super nervous. And I said, you know, these people that I'm working with llevan años siendo publicistas. Am I going to be able to do it? Did I do a good job? And I remember that once everything ended, one of them sent me an email. And she said, Becky, she's like, your work ethic is on another level. And I was like, oh.
That's so sweet.
Like, an amazing job. She's like, I'm so happy that I was able to work with you. And I was like, wow. And I'm over here like, I don't know, what did I do? So I think that comes into question a lot too, where we question ourselves or we doubt ourselves a lot. And I have to credit the people that saw it in me before I even knew I had it.
And they believed in you.
I did that for 2 years. So I had the opportunity of being a publicist. I loved it. I don't know if I'd want to make a career out of it, but I loved it and I tried it. If ever anybody needs me again, I could do it. But I don't think that's the path that I want to follow.
Right.
I managed an artist for a little bit as well.
Lo que me gusta, sorry, cut you off there, es que I love that, o sea, durante todo ese tiempo where you were like figuring things out, right? You weren't como que no te quedaste en el pensamiento. You know, a lot of people, like a lot of us, are like afraid of like, oh, no lo sé hacer, or like maybe should I do this? But then we don't do anything at the end of the day. But you, I love that you like, entre todo esa like tribulation in your head, you were like, you know what, I don't know, but like let me try it, and you're doing it as you're battling, or como que, oh wait, is this for me? Maybe not, but you're doing it, you know.
I think what's important also is, again, vuelvo a lo mismo, tú nunca sabes dónde te van a llevar las cosas que tú decidas hacer. Entonces what's the worst that can happen? You don't like it?
Yeah. Go
You don't
back
like
to
it, you
square
do
one.
it.
Yeah.
Lo haste y lo hiciste. And I think that comes hand in hand with the idea that I have and that I follow through, which is take every opportunity that comes your way. And another thing that I've always believed in, well, when I moved here to Miami, was the opportunity comes your way because you're ready for it. If you weren't ready for it, you wouldn't have the opportunity. And I think that that's super important to believe it, because it's a variety of things that can come from it. You can develop something that you like, that you never knew, that you never thought of. It can take you through a different route in life that you never expected. Pero también, obviamente, tú puedes hacerlo y puedes decir, no me gustó. I didn't like it. Punto.
Gotta move on.
No es algo que yo quiera volver a hacer. Pero lo intenté y me gustó. I'm good. You know, and there was also something else that, which also goes hand in hand with something that I believed in. I had a publicist friend of mine. I was talking to him a couple of years back. And I remember he said, I was telling him about like stuff that I wanted to do. And he said, I remember clearly, he said, Becky, do every single job out there that you can. He's like, porque cada uno te va a servir para algo. Ya sea el conocimiento que tú aprendas, que tú lo puedas usar en otra cosa, o incluso te lleve, que igual me dice, te lleve por otro camino, o no te gusta. Nunca va a ser una experiencia negativa, siempre vas a aprender algo de eso, sea positivo o no positivo. Entonces, era algo que yo también había pensado. Dije yo, I want to learn everything that I can. Y lo que me faltaba era del lado del business, de la música. Todo lo de social media y lo de outside, front facing, yo ya lo sabía. Yo lo que quería aprender más era del business side. Ahí fue que empecé a trabajar con una artista, que empecé a manejarla. La manejé durante un tiempo, no funcionó. Creo que fue una combinación de cosas. Creo que primero que nada el artista tiene que estar definido en lo que quiere. Puede tener un manejador si no está definido en lo que quiere hacer. I think that's the first thing. And, you know, I think also it has to do with the fact that if you're going to get a manager, you have to really, and this goes hand in hand with the influencer world, which I did. You have to understand that if you're getting a manager, first of all, if you're getting a manager, it's because you trust in that person. And you trust that that person knows what they're doing and that they're going to guide you in the correct direction. If not, you wouldn't hire them, right? And I think that you have to really kind of let them do their work. You know, tú sabes hacer la música y tú sabes hacer eso, pero el manejo deja hacerlo otra persona a menos que tú sepas hacerlo. Creo que por eso no funcionó, por muchas otras razones también. Pero también yo creo que yo misma, yo no estaba completamente lista para eso. Lo intentamos, hicimos un buen equipo durante unos meses, pero no funcionó in the end. And I think it was because I wasn't prepared for it as much as I thought I was. And I think she wasn't prepared for it either. So I think, you know, pero lo probé, lo intenté. What I do again, I probably would later on once I acquire more knowledge within the music industry and I feel like I have a better grip on it. But for now, I'm good with what I'm doing.
No, I love it. Y como dijiste tú, like, even with that experience, like, I'm sure you learned a bunch of other things. You're like, okay, quizás no haría de esa manera now. I'll maybe do this does work, you know?
And you know what? This is why I say it's important to learn and take every opportunity, because tú aprendes muchas cosas. En cada trabajo que tú tengas, tú vas a aprender algo. And believe it or not, things that I learned when I worked at the bank and when I worked at Fraud Investigator, I still use till this day. So it's not like things that you do in your life are a waste. They're always a learning experience. You learn something from them that eventually, whether you know it or not, you're going to use in the future. Entonces, cosas que yo aprendí durante el principio de mi carrera, cosas que yo aprendí en mi otra carrera, yo las uso hasta el día de hoy. O sea, son cosas que you know, knowledge never goes to waste. Yep. And in one way or another, indirectly or directly, you're going to use it. So I always say, take advantage of the opportunity, learn as much as you can. If you like it, great. If it takes you through a different route, great. If you don't like it, great. You tried it, now you don't want to do it.
Exacto. So let me ask you this. Entre todos los trabajos that you've done, like to this point, which one has been your favorite?
I think, someone asked me this the other day, and I think that my favorite has been the one I was doing at the moment. Every one of them has been my favorite when I was doing it.
That's a great answer.
And when it stopped being my favorite, that's when I stopped doing it, because you can't work with something that's not your favorite. When I started my fraud investigation job, I was super excited. I loved it. It was the best thing that I was doing at the moment. When I started doing the Wisin y Yandel, that was my favorite, and that's why I left my 9-to-5, because that became my favorite. That became my thing. And so every single job that I've had has been my favorite en su momento. Y cuando ya no fue mi favorito, pues lo dejé. I moved on to bigger and better things. And obviously now my favorite job is the one that I have now.
I love it. Entonces, maybe can you tell us a little more about that para que la gente que sepa un poquito?
So I'm currently working with Marc Anthony as his personal assistant. It's a job that I came into that literally fell on my lap. And this goes back to networking. It fell on my lap early last year, del 2023. Y fue una oportunidad que obviamente la tomé. Me preguntaron si estaba interesada. Obviamente estaba interesada, pero I didn't want to get too excited, because we tend to get super excited about things, and then cuando sucede, we cry.
Yep.
Y yo, bueno, it's something that I would love to do. It would be a dream job, pero I don't want to get too excited.
What was your first thought cuando te dicen las noticias?
Cuando me dieron la noticia, yo estaba así. Yo me acuerdo claramente que me dieron la noticia, y yo me acuerdo que yo me quedé así. My friend was with me, and she was like, "What happened? What's going on?" And I was like, and I remember I turned to her and I said, I got the job. And she said, and I was still like, and she was like, wait, like, what's going on? Like, why aren't you excited?
Uh-huh.
And I was like, I'm still in shock. I said, I'm sure I'm going to get excited at some point, but right now what I have is shock. And she was like screaming and jumping and blah, blah, blah. She said, you have to celebrate. And I was like, yeah. Like, it was a shock that, I'm not going to lie, lasted for about a week.
Oh my God.
And after a week, I was like, oh my God. That's what I'm like, it was in phases.
You were like, wait, is this really happening? Is this really true?
Exacto. Y como eso me tomó, yo creo que como unos 3 meses, where I still couldn't.
Oh my God.
I was already working with him, and I still couldn't believe that I was working with him. I would pinch myself every day. And I'm like, yo, this is an artist that I've known my whole life. I followed my whole life.
Una leyenda.
And I think also, and you can probably look at interviews or conversations that I've had in the past with other people, and when they've asked me who my favorite artist was, it's always been 2. It's always been Daddy Yankee, like favorite.
Yeah.
Me gustan muchos artistas, trabajé con Wisin y Yandel, they're one of my favorite, pero top, Daddy Yankee, yo creo que también por lo de pioneering entre la música, y Marc Anthony. Yo siempre lo he dicho, my all-time favorite artist is Marc Anthony. So for me to be working with him now is a literal dream come true. Nunca me lo imaginé, nunca hubiera pensado, o sea, nunca ni remotamente pasó por mi cabeza, ay, yo quiero trabajar con él. And again, when the opportunity came, it wasn't anything that I was looking for. I never really like applied for it. It was something that was presented to me, and I was like, And I went with it, and I said, que sea lo que Dios quiera. And now I see that this was the culmination, or the first culmination. I'm sure there will be many more. The first culmination of all of these years of hard work, all of the networking that I did, all of the work that I put in, and all of the knowledge that I took from everything that I did helps me so much in my day-to-day.
I love that. Oh my God. Y como, how was that? Like, I'm assuming the first day, like, how was it for you?
The first day was super nerve-wracking. Porque lo fui a conocer porque yo no lo conocía hasta que empecé a trabajar con él. Y me acuerdo que llegué al lugar y yo venía así.
Con una sonrisa hasta ahí.
Pero I was nervous because I was like, I'm going to meet, Marc Anthony. And I remember I came in and he was sitting down de espalda. Y me acuerdo que cuando le dijeron, oh, Marc, this is Becky. This is your new assistant. And he turned around and he's like, hi. He was so chill, so relaxed, so comforting. It made me feel so good. I'm like, okay, good. And nada, o sea, de ahí empezamos una muy buena relación, llevamos una muy buena relación y se fue dando súper, o sea, it's an honor. First of all, it's an honor for me to work with him. It's a privilege as well. It's a responsibility that I don't take lightly, and every day is a new day to learn something from him. I learn something from him every single day. He's an amazing artist, but he's an even more amazing person.
Oh, I love that. Uy, entonces me imagino con eso, you're like, porque es como que con todo lo que has hecho desde el principio, right? Like you said, like, oh no, like, I'm not going to say no. It's almost like cada oportunidad you're expanding to more, pero also como que atrayéndola. Do you know what I'm saying? Like you said, like you never thought about like, oh, like one day I'm just going to be with Marc Anthony y vamos a ser buddies, like, Pero con todo lo que has aprendido, like every skill and like every job that you've done, is like you said, you're preparing yourself for this moment. And maybe there's way even better things, and I'm sure they are gonna be in the future. Pero ahorita en este momento es like, okay, el universo, tú o Dios is like, okay, I think you're ready for this. Vamos a ver.
And I think that's why I say like it's so important to take every opportunity and learn from it, because everything that I do now is a product of what I learned during these 18 years. Everything that I've learned, I put into practice. And I'm pretty sure that everything I'm learning now, I'm going to put into practice in whatever I continue to do in the music industry. So it's so important to really learn as much as you can from every job that you have, and from every opportunity that you get, from every person that you meet. That's why I say network, because you never, ever know what's going to happen with that connection that you made, whether indirectly or directly. And that's actually how I got this job, because someone recommended me for it. Someone that I had made a connection with a few years back that was working with me at one point recommended me behind my back. And when they came, they were like, oh, so-and-so recommended you. And I was like, oh, okay. So that's when, I went forward with it. But that's why I say, like, it's so important to connect, because you never know, like, puede que en el momento no pase nada. O sea, no es que la persona te va a dar una oportunidad enseguida, pero es importante hacer la conexión y mantener, es la otra clave, mantener la conexión con la persona.
That's a big one. That
is even more important. That is more important than making the actual connection. Mm-hmm. Keeping the connection is much more important than making the connection, because you can make the connection, but they're never going to remember you if you don't continue to keep the connection. So that's why I always say, at least for me, it was so important to go to these events that had to do with music, because it's how I kept my connections alive. The more that they saw me, the more they would remember me, and the more that I would talk to them, and the more that we'd continue to talk, the more they would keep me top of mind for anything that they would need, you know what I mean, or anything that I would need. So I would say making the connection is important, but keeping the connection is much more important. And also just, continue to follow where they go. I have people that I know now that, he recently left, but he used to be the road manager for Prince Royce when Prince Royce started his career. Mm. And the last job that he had, I kept in contact with him, and I went through every single job that he had, and we worked together at one point with one of the artists that he was working with. And then he ventured off back into the label. And the last thing that he did was he was head of A&R at Warner Music. So, it's important to keep the connections, and it's also important to also show them that o sea, es muy importante, creo que para la gente del mundo de la música, y me incluyo yo ahora, es muy importante el tener un interés genuino en la persona. Don't fake it. Don't shit it. Like, we can tell when someone se está acercando a nosotros because tienen un interés. You know what I mean? Like, and that's why it was so important for me to make the connections, but keep them throughout the years. Because if I reach out, which I did, to my friend that was head of A&R at Warner, if I reach out to him asking him for a favor, he's going to know it's a genuine interest because I've known him for 10, 15 years.
Claro.
I just randomly meet him at an event and be like, hey, by the way, like, can you do this favor for me? He'd be like, I just met you, you know,
yeah,
like,
what are you doing? Like, who are you? Yeah.
For me, it's so important. First of all, never to ask for favors unless you really need them. But also try to have a friendship if you can with these people, like genuine friendships where they see that you like them and that you know that you're actually having a friendship or a relationship with them, not so much por interés, you know what I mean?
Claro, porque la gente se da cuenta.
Te garantizo que cuando surja la oportunidad en que ellos te puedan hacer algo o tú puedas hacer algo por ellos, lo van a hacer sin pensarlo because you've developed this relationship with them. So it's really important, those three things when it comes to networking.
Sí, porque también it's so obvious that whenever like la gente, I don't know if it's a feeling or it's an obvious thing, pero es como que I don't get the vibe that they're just either going to use me or there's something, yo sé that they're not going to like give it back or reciprocate that, you know?
Exacto.
So, pero déjame to almost wrap up here, te quiero hacer unas últimas preguntas.
Okay.
One is, what would you tell your younger self if you could do something different, or would you leave it how it was?
I don't think I would do anything different. I think everything that I went through and everything that I did brought me to this moment. I think that even with my career in criminal justice, I don't, a lot of people would tell me like, well, why didn't you study communications? And it wasn't really something that I wanted to do at the moment. I think that I went with my feeling of what I wanted to do, which was criminal justice. It's still a passion of mine. I don't know, maybe one day I'll go back to it, pero no me arrepiento de haber estudiado otra cosa. I don't think I would do anything differently. I think again, todo lo que yo pasé y todo lo que yo tuve que trabajar led me to this moment. I don't think it would have led me to here if I would have changed anything. So no, I don't think I would change anything.
I love
everything in the learning process.
I love that. So, and then for independent artists, because I know you worked a lot with the industry, but you've also worked with influencers, independent artists. What would you advise them? Porque yo sé que, like you and I know que mucha gente, digamos, el artista sabe, voy a sacar una canción y ya, pero no entienden mucho que tienen que hacer either contenido or, hey, have some budget, let me get a publicist. Like, ¿qué le dirías a un artista independiente que está, maybe not starting, pero como que ya tiene una semi-fundación y digan como que, okay, ¿cómo puedo, what should I do now? ¿Qué puedo hacer? Like, what should I consider?
I think one of the most important things is be very clear with what you want. I think that there's a lot of emerging artists that don't really know what they want, and they kind of dabble into too many things, and then nothing comes to fruition because you're all over the place. I think it's really important to decide what you want to do, what line of music you want to follow, and be set on that, even if you might be open to other possibilities. But I think it's important definirte y definir lo que quieres hacer, porque once you do that, then you can start developing a strategy of what's going to come next. If you don't know what you want to do, you're going to be all over the place y no vas a hacer absolutamente nada. So I think it's important to kind of figure out what you want to do first. Do you want to be a singer in English? Do you want to be a singer in Spanish? Do you want to be Spanglish? Like, you have to define yourself. And then I think once you define yourself, try to build a strategy. it's much easier nowadays because you don't need the backup of a label. You can do everything on your own. And social media comes into play a lot. So learn about social media, because social media is going to be your biggest ally, and it doesn't cost you a cent unless you put money behind it. Learn about social media if you're not really fluent in it. Watch other artists, what they're doing. Other artists maybe that do have a label, that have a whole team behind it. What strategy are they implementing? Would that work with you? It may or may not. So you have to decide that first as well. And then, do it with purpose. Don't just drop a song to drop it. What is the purpose behind the song? Who is the target that you're trying to reach? And once you determine that, you're like, okay, well, maybe Instagram makes more sense than TikTok, or TikTok makes more sense than Instagram. And I think take as much learning courses as you can, because you have to remember, an artist that's emerging or that's significantly small at the moment, you do everything. You're like me.
Yeah.
Tú eres tu publicista, tú eres tu social media manager, tú eres el productor, tú eres el escritor y tú eres el cantante. Tú haces
Literal.
todo. Entonces es muy importante aprender de eso, porque how are you going to market yourself if you don't know anything about marketing?
Mm-hmm.
And you, for the most part, the majority of the emerging artists don't have the budget to hire someone for social media marketing and someone that's a manager and someone that's a publicist. You don't have the money to bring a team on board.
Mm-hmm.
So you end up doing everything. And the only way that you're going to be successful is if you learn how to do it. That's why I said, if you don't know how to do social media is your biggest ally. Learn. There's so many ways that you can learn that now. There's so many people that offer courses. There's so many people that offer courses in social media marketing. So learn that. Go to the free courses. There's a lot of free courses. Go to as many panels as you can, whether in person or online. Learn about the music industry. Learn how it works. Learn who's who in the music industry.
Mm-hmm. That's important.
Very, very important to know who the head of each label is, who the head of Billboard Latin is, who the head of the awards are. It's so, so important, because when you start reaching out to people, you have to reach out to the correct people. And at the same time, you need to be able to say, I know exactly what they do. That was what happened with me. When I would reach out to people, I knew exactly who they were. I had been following them for a while. I knew exactly where they came from. You ask me for anybody in the music industry, and for the most part, I'm going to tell you who they are, what they currently do, and where they came from.
And where they live. No, mentira.
If you go into my investigative side, I can figure it out. That's a separate job. Pero es muy importante. O sea, tú no puedes... creo que esta fue una de las cosas que yo te platiqué con un artista recientemente, que hubo uno que estaba hablando conmigo y me dice, sí, porque yo le mandé un email a Leila Cobo, y yo, ¿tú le mandaste un email a Leila Cobo? ¿Y para qué? Entonces me dice, sí, pensé, porque yo quería ver si ella quería trabajar conmigo y si estaba disponible. Y yo le dije, ¿trabajar contigo cómo? And she's like, pues yo creo que ella es publicista o manager, right? Y yo, no!
Oh my God. O sea, they didn't even do their homework.
Entonces yo así como que, no, like, you can't reach out to people and not know what they do. Es una falta de respeto hacia la persona y hacia su tiempo. La persona is not going to give you any of their time if you're telling them, I want to see if you want to work with me as my publicist, and the person has no idea what a publicist is.
Yeah.
You know, it's just, you have to have respect for the people that you reach out to. You have to understand who they are. You have to understand what they do and how they can help you. One of the things that I received a lot, and, I was still navigating, so I didn't take it too personal, but they would write to me and they'd be like, I want to see how you can help me. And I'm like, okay.
¿Con qué?
¿Cómo? And they're like, bueno, es que yo no sé exactamente qué tú haces, pero yo quiero ver si
Oh
tú...
my God.
How do you want me to help you if you don't even know what I do? Like,
yeah.
and I tried not to be rude, but I was just like, I think you kind of need to figure out what you want first before you...
What you need, también, porque it's not like, I think...
What you need. Because, you can't reach out to someone at Apple Music and just say, like, I just want to see if you can help me. And they're going to be like, help you do what?
Yeah.
Es una falta de respeto al tiempo de la persona y a la persona misma por no saber lo que hace. So, you know, it's important to know who's who in the music industry, who are the important players. Do your research. O sea, siéntate a hacer el research. O sea, ¿quién es tal persona? Google them. Figure out who they are, where they come from, what they do, what they've done.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's super, super important. And then once you start equipping yourself with that knowledge and the knowledge of how the music industry works, and you start doing your homework and your research, it better equips you to promote yourself until you have the time and the money to, you know, bring on a whole team. But you can do it yourself. You just gotta invest in yourself. And it's not always investing money, it's investing time.
Yep. Especially when you're starting out, like time is your currency. You need to use that
Exactly.
as much as you can.
Exactly. So I think that would be like my biggest tips for them.
That was amazing. First of all, I want to say thank you so much for giving us your time and everything. Is there anything you would like to como que plug or decir, like what you're working on before we wrap up?
Bueno, ahora me estoy
Becky, the new album.
En mi trabajo con mi artista, salimos de gira en un mes, volvemos a irnos. And no, you know what? I'm really enjoying this moment. I'm really enjoying this chapter in my life. It's something that I've worked very hard for, and I like to cherish every single moment of it. And right now, what I'm doing is twofold. I'm putting into practice everything that I've learned, but I'm also taking as much information as I can to learn this part of the business, and, you know, use it for whatever comes next. Que ya en el momento Dios dirá. Por ahora estoy súper, súper feliz trabajando en esto, trabajando con un artista que admiro, que respeto. Y nada, te vuelvo y te repito, it's a twofold right now. I'm putting into practice everything that I've learned up until now, and I'm learning every single day of new things that I'm eventually going to put into practice en el futuro.
No, thank you so much, Becky. Y again, thank you so much, and then I hope you have a great one. Nos vemos.
Thank you. Estamos en contacto because now we're both in Miami. Bueno, por lo menos estaré yo un mes.
Un mes aquí. No, for sure.
Y definitivamente cualquier cosa que necesites, and you know that I've always been open to that, and you've always been open as well. So I wanted to say thank you for that, because since the first moment that we were introduced, you were very, very open and welcoming to anything that I needed. And that was a few years ago that I wasn't even, you know, who I am now. So I do cherish the people that did give me the time of day when I needed it. And I know that you've worked with a few people that we have in common. Que se ha ido dando.
I know, poco a poco, and it's working like sin querer, like just.
Total, and I also wanted to congratulate you because desde que nosotros empezamos a platicar hace ya unos añitos, you've grown a lot. You've grown a lot as a producer. You've grown a lot as you know, in developing yourself as to what you want to do, and you've been working with many more artists. You've been doing many more things. So I'm very, very happy for you, and I'm very, very proud of the work that you're putting in.
Thank you, Becky. We're going to be looking out for that Becky course coming soon, hopefully.
That's not too far. It's something that I've been speaking to a couple of friends about, because I do want to do, I don't know, maybe some panels, maybe some workshops on this.
Yes, what we need that.
So definitely
2024.
So I will be working on that simultaneously as much as I can. And you know, cuando se dé algo, definitivamente lo estaremos anunciando.
Amén. Bueno, Becky, thank you again.
Thank you. Y nos vemos pronto. Bye.